because it was so competitively strong. It absolutely positively had to be there, which was what their brand was built on. Your ability to call a phone number and later go online and see, yes, it's already there and this guy signed for it, was a huge advantage. And so FedEx had the kind of IT buyer who wanted to be the first one in. The next wave of people are people who are trying to hold par competitively, right? They don't want to be the first one in. The pioneer, to them, the pioneer is a picture of a dead guy with a bunch of arrows in their back, right? The first guy over the hill. They don't want to be that guy. They want to be the second mouse that gets the cheese, right? So let the first guy suffer through it. But they're relatively aggressive, just not first. And then there's the sort of the aftermarket, the people who are going to be, they're only going to come in when it looks bad for them not to be in yet. That's the way I see this curve. Well, there's a big switch. The first guys into the market, they actually like it. If they walk into our office and we're operating out of an apartment somewhere, and we just look totally like we're running this thing out of the back of our car or something. It's good for them because it makes them feel like their competitors don't know about us yet, right? We feel like a bona fide discovery, right? They want to be the one that discovers you. And if you think about like the music business, right? They want to be the one that, I was the first one to hear you. So they want that feeling, and that makes them feel great. And so when moving to those people, you don't actually have to look all that polished, and you can, and really what you be whatever you need, whatever they need you to be, right? So in our case, that was Lycos and CNET. Lycos was a big search engine before there was no search engine besides Google. But Lycos was a big search engine. And if they were using us, that made us safe to everybody else. See, what these guys will do for you is this next wave of customers that you want, they don't buy you until you're safe. And so you need to have a couple of people that they recognize as legit, who are customers of yours that you can point to, for them to say, oh, okay, you're safe. Now I can think about you. So when we were dealing with Lycos, we had to invent. Oh, brother, I said I was going to go quickly to Q&A. So if there isn't a better question, I'll tell you the story. But anyway, we had to do something. But there was this amazing story we did to get win Lycos business, like rip it out of the hands of somebody who owned it before we came into our meeting. And then in CNET's case, I had to give them some warrants on my stock to get them in. But because they knew that they were essentially, if they bought us, they were going to make or break our business by coming in, and they wanted a piece of that. So they got some warrants on our stock for coming in. And we did a couple things for them. But as soon as we had them, I mean, here's the interesting thing is that the right thing to do for those people is to be whatever they need you to be, and to be sort of start to be. And you're cool about what features you can invent every week. You want to show them what your product looks like now, all of that stuff. The wave of people behind them, and the ones that are really going to make you worth a lot of money, don't want to buy a product from anyone who looks like that. They want to buy products from leaders, right? And Henry Ford used to, when he was selling the Model T, he would say, you can get it in any color you want as long as it's black, right? And that's, market leaders don't go out and accommodate you. Market leaders sell you what it is everyone wants to buy, right? And that's, I mean, you look at, I mean, right now, right? If you want an iPhone, you can get it in one of two different colors and one of two different kinds, and that's it. Because if you wanted variety, you wouldn't be here buying my iPhone from me. On the other hand, everybody making Android is trying to come up with the next bestest way to be able to make an Android, because they know they're not the market leader, and they're trying to catch up. They're trying to out-innovate Apple and catch up to that edge of the market. But what we needed to do is, as soon as we had CNET and Lycos, we stopped talking about what we hope to make the product into tomorrow. We talked about our happy customers like CNET and Lycos, because that's what that next wave of people want to hear. And there's at this point a very old book called Crossing the Chasm that gets at this dynamic. Because if you don't catch that, you think, oh, I've figured out how to get customers. I just need to keep being whatever they need me to be. Then you start making some money, and you start spending it, and you wind up essentially dead, wondering what happened to you. And it's because there's a very few number of people who buy it the way the first people buy it. So, anything else you're going to ask me is going to fit in. Anything else I'm going to tell you is going to fit into one of the questions you asked me. So let me just stop here. What would you guys like to know about entrepreneuring? No, yeah, go ahead.
I just really like what you said
Thank you
about
for being first,
trust
by
as
the
a
way.
resource. Oh,
I knew you would be.
I was just waiting.
Yeah, but that's okay.
I love what you said about trust as,
Yeah.
as a resource, and I don't know if you have any more thoughts about that, because I just thought it was fascinating. Maybe even when you were talking, well, Bob did something earlier about he's a great salesman. He can sell something to you once for sure.
Yeah.
I would imagine trust really comes in to selling it that second time. And how do you not let down those first people, those first early adopters, where you're kind of iterating anyway, and you're probably going to mess up?
Right. So
their trust.
Yeah, and so I mean, there's a few pieces to this, right? And there are, I guess, in my view, more and less legitimate ways to accumulate trust, right? If you're accumulating confidence in something that you cannot deliver, you are a confidence man. You are a con man, right? And there are people who make good money being con man for a certain period of time. I would not, as a systems thinker, I don't see that as a sustainable way to set up a system. And so there's a certain level of transparency, right? And so there's a few principles I try to teach you. I try not to surprise people in bad ways, right? I try to let them know what I can about their situation as it's emerging. It's a calculated thing. I mean, you don't want to, something bad may happen, but I don't want to bother you about it until I feel like it's something that I would want to know if I was in your situation, right? But you wind up making these judgment calls about it. But I think in that respect, it kind of comes back to, I talked about trusting competence, and there's a trusting character. And the thing that I try to do is I try to be, I try to be consistent to the point where people, where I'm predictable in the good way. People know what, I'm who people expect me to be in whatever situation I find myself in. So they, if they're expecting that if something comes up, that I'm gonna jump in and fix it, or I'm gonna own it in different ways. That's in fact what I'm gonna do. Now there's a place that plays into that's kind of interesting. There was a very early on, I needed a QA quality assurance guy, and there was a guy that I wanted. He seemed to be very competent, and he's interviewing with me, and he's saying, I really like what's going on here. I like your team. I said, but I'm doing this for another company. I've got a good job, and you're a startup, and how do I know that if I take this job that you're not just going to sell the company in a few months and I'm going to be nowhere? And I told him, I said, here's the thing. If my very next conversation after this meeting was about selling the company, I could not and would not tell you. And if you can't live with that, then you shouldn't be here. I will tell you, whatever I can tell you about your situation, I will be as honest as I can, because at the time I have to sell the company, I can't be making your decision for you. I'm not in charge of making your life work out well. The best I can do is give you the dignity of being able to make adult decisions and live with the consequences, good or bad, from them. So ask me your best questions. I'll be as honest as I can with you, because after, if you decide to come in, then what happens after that is what you own. But and it was at that, I wasn't promising him something, right? I wasn't going to say, oh, that's not going to happen, or I'll make sure I take care of you, or everything's going to work out fine, because maybe it wouldn't have. I mean, a lot of these things go bad, right? The right thing to do under that time, and I think what earned his trust was, instead of doing the simple thing and saying, oh, it'll be fine, was to say, it may or may not be fine, and if you can't handle it, then go take a safe job. But we're all going to try very hard to make this work, and And he took the job, and it did work out very well for him. Something that was more complicated than I expected to be was making sure that when we did, and in that third company, we sold the company 22 months after I opened the checking account for it, and after we took the original investment for, well, it was a stock transaction, but let's say it was like for 80 or 90 million or something like that. I mean, it was a very good 20 months. And we had, at that point, 7 of the 20 largest ad-supported websites were using our software, which is a good place to be, because if you have 7 of the 20 largest, you will never be less than number 2. Right? NetGravity was a little bit larger than us. They were a little ahead of us, but that was okay, because anyone that was going to spend this amount of money on a product was going to have to at least show their boss they looked at 2 of them. So it wasn't like they weren't going to look at us as well, and if we had good, compelling reasons why we were a better option, we were going to get our share of the business. They had to teach people why they needed it. All we had to do was say why we were better than them. We had an easier job. So sometimes being the market, depending upon what market it is, sometimes being the market leader is not all it's made out to be. What else do you want to know?
So, please, a question?
Yeah.
So, yeah, thanks for your thought, and I really appreciate it. So, initially you mentioned about finding the next big thing and getting it done. So, what was the criteria of finding the next big thing, or how do you?
Well, it's not so much. It's a slightly different thing. It's not finding the next big thing in terms of a market opportunity. It's figuring out the next thing that you need, the next big problem ahead of you, right? In terms of entrepreneurship, it's a series of how do I find out whether customers want what it is that I have in mind, right? And then once you know what that is, it's like, well, they don't really like that, so how do I figure out what they do need? And how do I figure out how to build whatever that is? And how do I figure out how to raise the money to get the people to build whatever that is? And then how do I figure out how to convince the people that are going to get me the money to give me the money? And then how do I get the first part of it done in time to be able to get some customers looking at it? And how do I get the first sale? And how do I get somebody to write about it in the magazine so I get people besides the ones I know buying it? And everything that I wound up doing was a how do I question. And then at that point it was what am I really trying to, is this the most important thing? What am I really trying to, the better I define what it is that I'm trying to do, the more likely I am to be able to get the right answer for it. And then some of it is, who do I know? Where would I look to solve this problem? Is it a matter of somebody that I know, or somebody that, someone who I know knows? Or is it, the right place to look on the internet, or the right thing to go back to something that I did before that this sort of looks like? It's kind of a pattern recognition thing. So there's never, to me, the thing that's fun about it is that every time it's a different challenge. The things that right now, so that one being sold, I've actually, this time last year, in the tech program over at the MBA side of the school, a young man that I was mentoring was working on a technology that it was a biomaterial that pulls salt out of water, and they didn't know what to do with it at the time. But it turns out that everybody has a brine problem. If you're in the fracking business, every time you do a well, your brine problem is about a $400,000 problem. And there's more than one well a year that goes up. There's a lot of them. So that's a multi-billion-dollar market. That's just the first market out of many. So as he started to uncover this, he actually had a dream of being able to make this the company that he had. For him to start a company with the license of this technology from state, and I was involved in some things where I wanted to see whether that could happen, whether they would, sort of have the tech transfer office would give, essentially a grad student the keys to the car.